It is Dog Day Tuesday, and what that means for me is today is the day that I do agility with my two Australian Shepherds, Loki and Haven. So today for me is all about dogs. Dog Day for me used to be kind of what I looked forward every day when I was at work, especially nowadays. The 9 to 5 is dead. Let's just move on and admit it. To be honest, I just couldn't handle not 9 to 5. It was more like 6 to 6, 6 days a week, possibly 7. I mean, there were some serious moments where, yeah. So I'm out of that, and now I'm kind of just doing my passion, which is dogletics. So what is dogletics? It's athletes, dog athletes in a sense. Not to say that I am myself not running around telling him what he can and cannot do, giving him certain cues, but that is my life now, which is a pretty awesome life. I get to play with dogs for a living. So, what today's going to be is just kind of me shooting the shit, talking about topics that are related to dog owners. And the number one being, of course, dog food. What do I feed my dog? Back in the day, obviously some nasty kibble that they sell at Walmart or Target or one of those generic brands. I mean, I guess nowadays I do buy from Amazon. So we actually feed our dog kibble, which is actually very rare for the type of environment I'm in. Most people either feed their dog raw food or they go the human grade, which isn't a thing. I'm going to talk about that later. That's just another marketing thing. Human grade animal food doesn't exist. But overall, how is kibble made, and why are people so against kibble? And is some kibble better than other kibbles? I mean, a lot of kibble, especially mass produced, like Purina, which Nestle makes. Maybe Nestle, I'm not really sure. A lot of those kibbles, if you look at the ingredients, you wouldn't eat it even if it wasn't kibble. Like, you wouldn't even eat the raw ingredients. It's like peas and grains that you've never heard of and flours that you've never heard of. So if you move on to more the like boutique type foods like Signature, which is grain-free, Wellness Core, Nom Nom, Blue Mountain, all those type of brands, it is still important to read the back of the labels, because even though 90% of their ingredients aren't as bad as the ingredients you'd see with Purina or like Meow Mix for the cats, but they do still, like, the first 5 ingredients, you don't even see a protein until number 5. So a general rule that I kind of play by, which is that there should be meat in the first 3 ingredients, and then you can have filler. One of the brands I brought up was Signature. We actually used to use Signature. It was the big fad of being grain-free. Dogs don't really digest grains, actually neither do humans, which is why the gluten-free thing kind of went nuts for a while. But then there was this huge concern of grain-free, they're lacking key nutritional values such as taurine, right? Which is funny because, like, taurine actually occurs naturally in most meats, so it's kind of interesting. But the reason it was happening is because these exotic brands, or these boutique brands, were using really exotic meats like kangaroo, which I'm not gonna lie, I totally fell victim of it. My dog loved kangaroo. But when you feed your dog that on a daily basis, it'd be like us eating steak every single day. To begin with, that's really not a good idea anyway, because you're supposed to get your nutrients from all different types of meals that we eat throughout the day, let alone throughout the week. I should give you a little bit of my background. So when I was in the corporate world, I was actually the head of a quality department for a food manufacturing company, a couple startups, one of them being gluten-free, another one being like keto, paleo, all those different trends. And as a result, I have a lot of experience, especially in regulation, which that's why I'll get back to the human grade marketing scheme that these food companies are kind of doing these days. So grain-free, let's go back to that. Now, is grain-free bad or is grain-free good? Well, it depends. You just got to reading the label. Why would you feed your dog anything you don't read the label? And if you're one of those people that don't even read the label of your own food, you really probably shouldn't be concerned about what your dog's eating. I mean, obviously you should, because it's an animal. It's your family member. For me, they're my fur babies, and I treat them better than I treat my own body. So I actually, at least with their labels, I read it because they don't have the choice. With me, sometimes I make bad decisions, but we'll move on from that. So grain-free. The important thing is to make sure it has taurine. Signature does not, which is why Signature got such a bad rep in the media in the last couple of years. So we switched over to Wellness Core. Now, you might ask, Colby, why are you not going the raw diet? So raw diet is when you feed your animal a diet more similar to what they would experience in the wild. So you're pretty much feeding them as if they were wolves. Well, for one, let's remember, they're not wolves. We all like to, they're these cute little Daiwa wolves, like on Game of Thrones. But no, they've been domesticated for thousands of years. They are not wolves. However, there are benefits to raw diets because raw diets provide a variety of nutrients, and it provides it in a way where the nutrients haven't been destroyed yet. So with Kibble, the way Kibble's made is they put all the ingredients together and then they dehydrate it, which means they take all the water out and they heat it to really high temperature. Dude, my hair burns after I've been straightening it for too long. What do you think happens to food? Would you eat a charcoal burger and expect to get nutrients out of that? Probably not, which is why, side note, I give my dog supplements, but that's also because we do agility training and they have a lot of, jumps and turns on their body that they kind of need, like any bodybuilder would take supplements when they're preparing for an event, or any college athlete of that sort. So back to raw food. Now, raw food, a lot of veterinarians will hesitant to recommend it, and that's because they're concerned about the bacteria levels, which is interesting because dogs' stomach levels are quite low. They can handle it. So when they're saying they're worried about bacteria, what they really mean is they're worried about your health. So as long as you follow what's called good manufacturing practices, which is cleanliness, hygiene, wash your hands, don't touch your face. It's the same thing when you're handling raw meat, when you're cooking, when you're chopping chicken in the kitchen. It's the same concern. So raw meat is a good idea. However, you really do need to make sure you're mixing what you give them, because if you're not giving them a full array of nutrients like they do in Kibble. In Kibble, they kind of just dump all the nutrients into one serving, so you're getting that serving every day for weeks on end, versus raw food. You can't give everything at once. You've got to mix and match. So as long as you have the time to do that, there are some companies like Farm to Bowl out here, I'm in Chicago, where they do rotating. However, the reason, to be honest, I refrain from it is just simply price. It's about $150 a week per dog. So that's kind of why we stick to Kibble, but I also have a lot more knowledge in supplements, a lot more label reading, just because of my background in food safety in the health department and working with companies that do similar things. So that brings me to the human grade dog food that doesn't exist. They're lying to you. So in the food industry, there are different regulations, one of them being USDA, one of them being FDA, and then there's other regulations as well. One's called FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act. It's actually quite new. It was put in like 2018-ish, depending on how big the company was. I think the smallest companies had to comply in September of that year. And what that does is it makes stricter regulations on food, but that doesn't mean that food magically got safer. Actually, because the regulations were so lax, there was this other thing called a third-party audit, which they had really strict standard, and pretty much nobody would accept anything unless you had that standard anyway. So FSMA is just the FDA's way of kind of catching up to the actual industry standards, but it was only for human food. And if you look at pet food, and it's completely different. It's not even under the same regulation, and they didn't have a lot of improvements done in that section. So back to human grade. So what does human grade mean? Well, human grade just means it's not feed grade, because human grade doesn't exist. So you have You have food for consumption for ready-to-eat products, and then you have feed grade, which means pretty much what happened back in the day is a lot of companies were wasting food. They were falling to the ground, bags were breaking, and they wanted to find a way to recoup it. They couldn't put it in the human food because of the way the regulation was, so they sold it to animal farms that were used as feed farms, and then they started making regulations of what that meant, and that is called feed grade. Now, pretty much when these companies say they're human grade, which means they do not use feed grade ingredients, which, yes, that sounds exactly what humans do. However, that is just one part of ready-to-eat product regulation. So pretty much we're not allowed to make a bagel with an egg that fell on the floor. That sounds pretty logical to me. However, there's other regulations, such as when that egg came in, was it temped? Was the trailer inspected to make sure was it clean? When they cooked it, did they record the temperature that it got to ensure that all bacteria was killed? Was it packaged correctly? Was it stored in the correct locations? And so on. Are chemicals stored in a separate location so the chemicals don't fall into the food? There's an array of regulation when it comes to human food. However, there is no such thing as human grade food. So unless they are complying with those standards I was telling you about, those audit standards, those third party, they can use whatever language they want. They're just using the word animal feed food and trying to make human grade opposite to that, and that there's no truth in that. So if you really do want to get human grade food, to be honest, we're not quite there yet. Yes, we're getting better with animal safety. Yes, we're getting better with animal food. Yes, we're getting better with, creating a better life for animals through daycare, through hiking, putting importance on their happiness. But the food industry is not where the food industry is now. Go on the FDA's website and look at the last 10 recalls in the last 10 months. You're going to see that 90% of them are pet food. And it's really sad. So if you really want human grade food, you need to be looking for the words that human grade food uses. And a lot of people don't know them. USDA, HACCP, GFSI certified, third-party audit. Those are the words that you're looking for. Human grade food means nothing. I'm not telling anyone to go to human grade or go to Kibble or go to grain-free. To be honest, Kibble food has the least amount of recalls, and that's mainly because of how high the food is heated to. And a lot of it has to do with these companies have been in business for a long time, which is why you see companies like Signature having recalls, Nom Nom having recalls, and so on. And it's mainly because they're new. I mean, they wanted to do a good thing. They put out a new product, and they're trying to make animals' lives better. I mean, that happens with every industry. We'll look at this gluten-free beer. Well, technically by definition, beer can't be gluten-free because in order to be beer, you have to have barley in it. Barley's gluten. So what they do is either they don't put barley in it, it's not real beer, but there's no regulation on it, so they'll tell you it's beer, or they use an enzyme to extract all the gluten out. Well, what happens if you don't extract all that gluten out and you get somebody who's extremely celiac? But that's how the industry grows. So either way, I'm not telling you what one to use. I'm just making you aware of all the different marketing tactics that these food companies do because they're trying to get your business, especially the big companies like Purina, because guess what? Consumers don't want them anymore. They're seen as these big companies that you don't know what's going in their food, over-processed, overheated, there's no probiotics. There's tons of research coming out showing that Kibble isn't that good for your dog, so people are looking for alternatives, but those alternatives have not been proofed yet. However, if it were me, which I have 2 dogs, I would do what's best for your animal.